What if the one man who could have stopped World War II wasn't Hitler's enemy? What if he was Hitler's own general? Picture this. It is the spring of 1938. Inside a Berlin war room, a 57-year-old general sits across a mountain of classified documents. His desk lamp burns past midnight. Around him, his colleagues are celebrating. The Führer has just swallowed Austria without firing a single shot. Champagne is being poured in the halls. Medals are being polished. But this general is not celebrating. He is writing memo after memo, warning after warning, pages filled with cold military logic, begging his commanders to see what he sees, that Germany is sprinting toward a cliff, that Hitler's genius is actually a suicide march, that the next move, invading Czechoslovakia, will trigger a war Germany cannot survive. He sends the memos. Nobody listens. He writes more. Still nothing. So he does something that in Nazi Germany was more dangerous than any battlefield. He resigns.
His name is General Ludwig Beck, and what happened to him after that decision is one of the most haunting, most human stories of the entire Second World War. Welcome to Nazi History, where we tell the stories that the history books summarize in a footnote, but deserve an entire film. If you are new here, subscribe right now and hit the bell, because we go deep, we go real, and today we go into the life of the man who almost changed everything. Stay with me. This one gets dark. June 29, 1880. A child is born in Biebrich, a quiet riverside town on the Rhine, today part of Wiesbaden in Germany. His father is an industrialist, respected, structured, the kind of man who believes a person's word is their currency, and discipline is the foundation of character. He names his son Ludwig August Theodor Beck. From a young age, Ludwig is different from the other boys, quieter, more deliberate. He reads when others play. He thinks before he speaks. His teachers notice it.
His commanding officers will later notice it too. In 1898, he graduates and enlists in the Imperial German Army. Over the next 15 years, he moves through military academies, staff schools, and regimental postings across the German-French border regions. Strasbourg, Saarburg, Nice. He is not flashy. He does not seek glory. He seeks knowledge. And in 1912, the General Staff in Berlin calls for him. He has arrived at the nerve center of the most powerful military machine in Europe. Then, August 1914 hits, and the whole world catches fire. Beck serves throughout the First World War, working across staff positions in the Western Front. He watches Germany's early confidence curdle into 4 years of catastrophic attrition, mud, wire, poison gas, and a million graves. November 1918, Germany surrenders. For Beck, this is not just military defeat, it is personal, shattering. Like most officers of his generation, he believes the army was never truly beaten in the field.
They were abandoned by politicians, by revolution at home, by a government that signed away German dignity at Versailles. The Treaty of Versailles is vicious in its terms. Germany's army is cut to 100,000 men. The general staff is formally abolished. Conscription is banned. Germany, once the military titan of Europe, is reduced to a paper army watched over by its humiliators. Beck stays, and in the quiet years of the Weimar Republic, he does something remarkable. He becomes a military intellectual. He writes, he studies, he theorizes. In 1931, he is part of a team that publishes the official German Army Operations Manual, a document so forward-thinking, so precise in its doctrine of mobile warfare, that its revised version reportedly remains in use today. He is not just a soldier, he is a thinker. And thinkers in times of political madness tend to end up in trouble. January 1933, Adolf Hitler becomes Chancellor of Germany. Here is the uncomfortable truth, and this is what separates great history from comfortable history. Beck was not horrified. He was relieved. He actually wrote in his own hand, "I have wished for years for the political revolution, and now my wishes have come true. It is the first ray of hope since 1918. Read that again. The man who would eventually try to overthrow Hitler once greeted his rise to power with open arms. Beck was not a Nazi. He cared nothing for racial ideology, anti-Semitism, or party theatrics, but he was a German nationalist who wanted one thing, a strong, rearmed, respected Germany. And Hitler, in those early years, appeared to be delivering exactly that. Rearmament was accelerating, the military was expanding, Germany was walking tall again.
In 1933, Beck is promoted to head the Truppenamt, the cleverly disguised successor to the officially banned General Staff. He is now rebuilding Germany's military brain from the inside. And in July 1935, when Hitler openly recreates the General Staff in direct defiance of Versailles, Beck becomes its very first chief.
He is at the absolute summit of German military power, but something is beginning to change inside him. Now, here is the part most documentaries skip entirely, the human part. Beck was not a cold calculator. People who knew him personally described a man of genuine warmth, cultured, well-read, someone who loved classical music and long philosophical conversations over coffee. He had lost his wife, Amalie, in 1917, in the middle of the First World War, and had raised their daughter largely alone while managing a military career. He never remarried. There is something quietly romantic and deeply tragic about that image. A widower, a father, a man who chose duty and country as his companions, because the person he loved most had been taken from him, while Germany was already tearing itself apart. This is not just a general. This is a human being who watched everything he cared about, family, country, honor, get consumed one piece at a time.
And by 1938, the consuming had reached the military itself. Hitler's plan in 1938 is to invade Czechoslovakia, smash the Sudetenland, seize Bohemia, and dare Britain and France to stop him. Beck runs the numbers. He studies the maps. He reads the intelligence. And he concludes with absolute certainty that this is the beginning of the end. He writes memorandum after memorandum, detailed, precise, devastating in their logic. He argues that Britain and France will not accept another bloodless humiliation, that Germany's army, despite its growth, is not prepared for a multi-front war against major powers, that Hitler's strategy of perpetual pressure will eventually snap the rope and Germany will fall through. He pushes for something unprecedented in the Nazi military hierarchy, a collective stand by the senior generals. Imagine it, the top commanders of the Wehrmacht walking into Hitler's office as one body, presenting a unified refusal.
Beck believes that if they act together, Hitler cannot fire them all, cannot arrest them all. The sheer weight of unified military opposition might force the Führer to pull back. He reaches out, he pleads, he argues. The generals will not move. Some are true believers who have drunk the Nazi triumph. Some are opportunists protecting their own careers. Some are simply afraid. In the brutal political climate of 1938, defying Hitler was not a career setback. It was a death sentence. Beck stands alone. On August 18, 1938, he submits his resignation as chief of the German General Staff. He is the first senior officer in the Third Reich to break with the Nazi regime on moral grounds. Not because of a personal grudge, but because he refused, simply refused to participate in a catastrophe he could see coming. Hitler accepts the resignation. He buries the news. He doesn't want the German public to know that one of his top generals thinks the whole enterprise is doomed.
Beck disappears from public life, but he does not go quiet. In private, he maintains contact with a network of officers, diplomats, lawyers, and politicians who share his terror of where Hitler is taking Germany. As the war begins in September 1939 and Germany's armies tear through Poland, then France, then the Balkans, the victories pile up and the doubters are temporarily silenced. But Beck watches the strategic picture, not the headlines. June 1941, Hitler invades the Soviet Union, opening a front of incomprehensible scale and violence. Beck had warned against exactly this. February 1943, the German Sixth Army surrenders at Stalingrad. 300,000 men gone. Beck sees the tide turning in brutal, irreversible detail. By 1943 and into 1944, the conspiracy to kill Hitler has become real, organized, and desperate. Beck is its chosen leader, the man who would head the provisional government after the assassination, negotiate peace with the Allies, and pull Germany back from the edge of complete annihilation. The conspirators call themselves the Widerstand, the resistance. They know that if they are caught, their deaths will not be quick.
July 20th, 1944, the Wolf's Lair, East Prussia. Colonel Klaus von Stauffenberg walks into Adolf Hitler's daily briefing carrying a leather briefcase. Inside that briefcase is a British-made bomb, packed and primed. He slides it under the heavy oak conference table as close to Hitler as he can place it and leaves the room on the pretext of a phone call. At 12:42 p.m., the bomb detonates. The explosion tears through the building. Windows shatter. Men are thrown across the room. 4 people die from their injuries. Others suffer shattered eardrums, broken bones, severe burns. Adolf Hitler walks out of the smoke, alive. A thick table leg had redirected the blast. The Fuhrer had minor injuries: burned trousers, burst eardrums, a bruised arm. In Berlin, at the Bendler Block military headquarters, Beck and the other conspirators had already begun to mobilize, issuing orders, preparing the provisional government, announcing the death of Hitler on internal military channels. Then the phone rang.
It was Hitler, very much alive, very much in control. The entire conspiracy collapsed in hours. General Friedrich Fromm, a conspirator who had hedged his bets and immediately chose self-preservation the moment the plot failed, moved with stunning speed to arrest the very men he had conspired with. Beck was taken into custody. He was 64 years old. He had spent his entire adult life in service to Germany. He had resigned from the highest military post in the land rather than participate in catastrophe. He had risked everything and failed. He knew what was coming: the Gestapo, the interrogation cells, the People's Court, where Judge Roland Freisler had already screamed defendants into trembling wrecks before sentencing them to death by slow strangulation on piano wire, deaths that were filmed and shown to Hitler as private entertainment. Beck asked for one thing: to keep his pistol. Fromm granted it. Shortly after midnight on July 21, 1944, Ludwig Beck raised his service weapon to his temple and pulled the trigger.
The gun fired, but Beck was still alive, catastrophically wounded, bleeding heavily from the skull, but breathing. His hand had trembled at the critical moment. The bullet had not finished it. He lay on the floor, semi-conscious, barely alive. A sergeant stepped forward on Fromm's order, pressed his weapon to the back of Beck's neck, and fired. General Ludwig Beck was dead at 64, not by formal execution, not by courtroom sentence, but on the floor of the building where he had tried to save his country from itself. The desecration did not stop with death. Beck's body was buried quietly in the old St. Matthew Cemetery in Berlin-Schöneberg, but the SS returned. His grave was dug up, his body transported to a crematorium in Berlin's wedding district, and incinerated. His ashes were then deliberately scattered across the city's sewage fields, an act of calculated posthumous humiliation intended to deny him any grave, any memorial, any marker where future Germans might stand and honor him. They wanted him erased from history.
They underestimated history. In 1956, the West German government renamed a military academy in Sonthofen, Bavaria, in his honor. Today, Ludwig Beck is remembered across Germany as a symbol of conscience, the general who said no when no one else would, who saw the abyss before anyone else admitted it existed, and who chose principle over survival. Ludwig Beck was not a perfect man. He once welcomed the very monster he later died trying to destroy. That contradiction is not a flaw in his story. It is the story. It is what makes him human. It is what makes him real. He saw the truth. He tried to act. He failed. And he paid for it with his life and even his grave. If this story moved you, hit that like button right now. It takes 1 second and it helps this channel bring you more stories like this one. Subscribe to Nazi History and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Drop a comment below. Do you think the July 20 plot could have succeeded if more generals had joined Beck back in 1938? I read every single comment. See you in the next one.